Good morning. My name's Barry Treleaven and I'm your lecturer for 2023 on the unit code CPCCBC4004 Identify and Produce Estimated Costs for Building and Construction Projects. This semester we have an overlap in regards to the old unit and what is called the new training package. And how that actually works, there's a set of information that we have to include in this unit for semester one, and it comes under the title here, Assessment 1, Instructions and Information. So what I'm going to do is run through the details of that, and we can then work through some of this extra information that was informally given previously and now in a much more formal manner. So if we click on to that, and it'll open up, and what you will see right up the head up here is Assessment 1, Instructions and Information. And so we've got some dot points, which what would TAFE be without dot points? The PowerPoint shows the processes to establish the project requirements, read and interpret construction drawings and specifications, different building construction codes and standards relevant to the construction project, identify building site features, establish site facility, communication and temporary bounding fencing requirements, identify waste removal requirements, and finally, identify project-specific statutory approvals or compliance costs. Building today is a much more complex procedure than what it was 50 years ago when I started in the building industry. And boy, do I see it. It is so different, but that's okay. We will work our way through that. Okay, so what you need for this page really is we have 4 PowerPoints, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they're very informative. They've got all the information that you need for your assessment. And also down here, you've actually got your assessment questions. Okay, and so what I'm going to do with that right now is actually open that up. And funny enough, it didn't want to actually, we'll just go save for that and it'll open up eventually. And there it is there. Okay, so what you actually have is a much more formal document that ordinarily you wouldn't see. And we actually follow through with that at the moment for some obscure reason. It doesn't want to actually show that. So now what I'll do is actually share the screen again. Yeah, so this is a little bit different than what we would normally have, and it's this one here, I think, and go share. Okay, and boy, do I look scary in that picture. Okay, all right, so what we actually have over here, and you can see the title, and we could see the 4 different streams that are in the certificate for in building and construction, building, site manager, estimator, and also covers diploma students as well. Our particular home that we're going to estimate for this semester is a residential home, and the reason being for that is that most of these 3 streams cover that sort of area. Diploma students would more than likely would love to do a commercial site, but we have enough trouble doing a residential, and the principles are pretty much the same. All right, so what we actually also have here is some of the information, methods of assessment, overview of assessment. From 7 to 28 are all the different specifications that are meant to be covered in relating to reading and interpreting plans and specifications. And they are quite expansive. And so depending on what area you're in, so if you were actually doing civil work, you'd be having a look at some of those plans and CAD drawings, aspects of drawings. And so some of those are really quite overwhelming, because you look at it and you think, what does that actually mean? Now, as part of any assessment nowadays, this is not really the location of the assessment, maybe in your own home. And so we've got some dot points here that are recommended. And so, for example, a desktop computer or laptop, reliable internet, which is just a must, landline telephone or mobile phone, appropriate lighting, and industry reference material. So these are all things which impact how we do our assessments. You guys can actually read through that, resources required, and they repeat it. But the number one thing is access to the Learn site, identify and produce estimated costs for building and construction work. In that, I've constructed the course over several years in such a way that one of the key functions of an estimator and the knowledge that an estimator must have is how does the building process work? And I mean in the fine detail. And something like that is a real must. And I guess it's a little bit like if you work for Boeing, and when they had the jumbo jet, that jet has 6 million parts. Just consider that for a moment. 6 million. They have to actually identify, have to cost the material to source it, make it, and fit it. And you can't miss anything out. And of course, I always put at the end of that, don't forget the wings. It'll never fly. Every house has a myriad amount of componentry that must be covered. If we don't, and one of the reasons I get a lot of students say, why don't you just do square meters? It'd be really easy just to do everything in square meters. Well, what you need to do is a little bit of a search over the last 18 months, 2 years. And we've got truckloads of builders that have gone, have collapsed through circumstances, some of them beyond their control. But how many of them actually went through their job very, very carefully? Okay, at the end of the day, your responsibility is to make sure that you cover the entire costs. Okay, computer with internet, installed software. You will actually have access to the construction drawings, and basically you also need to have access to it's no longer called the Building Code of Australia, it's called the NCC. So even there's this overplating of old and new within any of our building. Okay, the first page that you really need to take and pay attention to is this one here, and it is in red. Okay, so I'll read it. Before this assessment starting, the following must be done. If this is not filled in correctly, your assessment will be a resubmit. And that is, first of all, I need for you to, on this page, actually place a scan of your ID. Okay, and that will give me the important information that I need. Also, I'm 67. I cannot remember, and usually I get well over 100 students. In actual fact, last semester I taught, I had 209. It's impossible to remember 209 students. So what actually happens is I can then identify, and especially just, different nationalities and all that type of stuff. It just aids me in actually putting a name to a face or a face to a name, and it's just easy running of the class. Okay, I've actually had 2 students with the same name. All right, and that was just genuine. Both of them had the same name. And so therefore the only way that I could actually tell was looking at the ID number, and also having a picture. All right, makes a huge difference. Okay, whatever CRN you are in. Okay, and so when you enrolled, you would have actually clicked into a CRN, for example, on the Wednesday night classes, which are really popular. You would actually put that number in there. And down the bottom here, you don't have to put anything. The fact is, semester 1, 2023. If you're a 2022 student, this will not work for you. Okay. Okay, so let's have a look. And I thought the best thing to do is actually go through the assessment and just quickly, there's 13 questions, and then we'll go into the PowerPoints and as a delivery methodology. Okay, I'm going to put a lock. You cannot do the assessment unless you actually check out all of the PowerPoints. Okay, so if you're that type of student, you go, don't worry about it, I'll just smash it out. Okay, this is not the course for you. Okay, one of the things about being an estimator is you must be a detailed person. If you're not, you will fail, and spectacularly. And it's really important to make sure that you grab all the details. All right, question 1. This is actually divided into 3 parts, and it says the National Construction Code, NCC, was also known the Building Code of Australia, is divided into 3 volumes. Briefly describe the scope of each volume. Okay, now there's only a very small amount of room here. I am not expecting 14 pages of cut and paste about the National Construction Code Volume 1. What I'm expecting you to do is exactly as the question there, briefly describe the scope of each volume. Okay, so volume 1, you need to have a look at that, and at the very front of each of these publications is the actual information that I require. And I require that in a succinct, not overworded. We get lots of students who fill out pages and pages and pages, and all of it is fluff. Okay, what we want is what we really need, and that is, what does volume 1 cover? What's the scope? So first of all, obviously you would actually have a look under scope. Volume 2 and volume 3. Pretty simple, okay, but these are things. Now all of you would have done building codes, and so you should have a active memory of what you actually covered under that unit, okay? So for volume 1, 2, and 3. All right, that was easy, wasn't it? Okay, number 2, list 6 bushfire attack level ratings that the AS 3959 uses to establish the requirements for construction. And you've got 6 dot points. So pretty simple. Now we've got 4 dot points here because we want 4 methods of managing waste on a building site. So that requires a little bit of search. Now the search for that is in your PowerPoints, not Google. Okay, we get people who put in stuff from Google in America, Google all over the place, and we've got actually resources for you to actually look at. Now, there's 12, 13, and 14, so there may be some other information that you could actually put in there. Now, notice there's a link here, so Control or Shift and click, and basically you're going to be able to go straight to EPA laws. Now, every state actually has this same function, except the only difference is the state. And so we've actually used this one here. All right, question 4, briefly explain what the general requirements of a building are. And so there they are there. It's in Building Code Volume 2. Briefly explain what the performance requirements of buildings are. Okay, All right, number 3, briefly explain the relationship between a building's performance requirements and compliance options. For example, performance solutions deemed to satisfy solutions. What does it say about that? All right, pretty tickety-boo stuff. All right, there are 5 sets of regulations administered by the Environmental Protection Agency in South Australia and Victoria, and the links are here for both. Left-hand side, Victoria, right-hand side, South Australia. Control and click to follow the link, and you can actually put some information in there. And so the source there, EPA regulatory approach. Okay, so you could check all of those. Now, number 6 is a learn assessment that we do in class. And so what you will require is to open up the plan set that is in Learn. And this actually happens in week 1. Okay, so when week 1 starts, this is what I do right at the very end of the night, is get everybody, the last hour, I actually go through. One of the first things that an estimator must be able to do is identify all the key features on a plant or on a home that they're building. You can't just have a cursory look and go, yeah, I understand that. No, you need to actually know exactly one. So what I've done is put together 30 odd questions, and these questions are 30 different points on the plan set, which is either 5 or 6 sheets. And so you need to actually have a look at that. This will actually happen in class, so it doesn't have to be answered in this sheet. All right, number 7, identify one set of regulations in South Australia related to building commercial buildings, and briefly explain how the set of regulations is related to building commercial buildings. So there's a little bit of a search here for you, and you can actually go through and over there put down the sets of regulations that you've found, and over there, and I've just said one set, okay, but there's a number in with that, and we're looking pretty good. Now, the final question, and everything about this is actually in PowerPoint 3, is outline the requirements for the operation of the physical resources listed below. So bulldozer, excavator, hoist, forklift, mobile crane, compressor, generator, and pump. Now, on a residential job, more than likely, about the only thing that we would have to be concerned about is bulldozer, excavator in the initial stages of setting up the site. Then you would actually look at certainly perhaps a generator. If you had water issues, a pump. All right. Now, once you've answered all of these and you're happy with your answers, then what you need to do is upload this into Learn. Now, that's pretty simple. It's not a difficult thing, but many students forget this very key point. And so I've written this. When you have completed your assessment, upload your Word document. Do not forget to press submit. Now, the reason for that is because if you put in a submission and you forget to press submit, I do not get any notification that you've put an assessment in. So on my email every week, every day actually, I will get every time a student's put in an assessment, a notification that that assessment has gone in there. And I'll normally have 1 or 2 days a week where I do nothing but mark, and it's all in the order that you have actually uploaded the material. I don't jump around and go, oh no, I don't want to answer that one, I want to answer this one. No, it's just in order. And but the thing is, when that's all happening, if I've got 4 units or 3 units, I'm jumping from here to there to do the marking, and I don't actually go right inside of Learn to actually make sure that everybody is actually press submit. And so I see it every year. Sooner or later, up will come one, and it's never been looked at because it doesn't come up in the information. And that's just one of those. So I'm giving you a heads up. Learn doesn't notify lecturers and what actually happens is when you don't press submit, it becomes a draft submission and you don't see it. And so that's a major issue. Okay, so there you have it. That is actually the assessment questions. So now what I'm going to do is go back and I'm going to shut down this file. Okay, get rid of this one as well. And the first thing we're going to do is actually have a look at the PowerPoints. Now again, I do not know why this thing is actually doing that. They've got a really weirdo thing going on here. Here it is here. Okay. And we'll try and make this as big as possible. Rightio. And this is your first port of call, PowerPoint 1. And so we're going to do a run through with that, and it's actually quite a reasonable PowerPoint. And we'll just go save, and then I'm going to open it. Yep. Okay, so you got your cover. All right, eventually. Now again, yeah, it's a really going to have to actually do some work with this thing, I can tell you. Just excuse me for a minute. All right. Okay. All right. Establish project requirements. And so basically release 1. What does that mean? That means that this is started from scratch. We've put it all together. I did this late last year and basically put this all there. Now, any mistakes, any issues or anything like that, I'll just appreciate it greatly. You just put it in an email, send it to me, and take a snip image of what is actually an issue, and I can have a look at it, and basically we can upgrade it. And at the end of a year, it becomes not release 1, but release 2. And any errors and omissions, and I was doing 3 units at once, which means that it's very easy to get mixed up. So this PowerPoint is actually quite good. It's quite clear. And so let's have a look. So about this unit, and it tells you pretty much, and specifies the skills and knowledge to establish estimated costs and with the acquisition of materials and labour for building and construction projects. So quite an interesting thing. So what we should have at the end of this session is understand what establishing project requirements actually is, how we would calculate the materials and labour cost, identify the type and cost of physical resources, and the final dot point, produce estimated project costs. So if we don't actually work out what the project is, how are we ever going to work out all the material we need for that? So if it was a multi-story building, a civil job, then at the moment, like when you go to Tonsley, you can look up to Flinders and to the Flinders Medical, and they've got a couple of cranes up there. And so everything, this is a vastly different requirement than a residential home, but it's the same principles. And so you can see over here in the background, people working on resources for a large project. Now, in red, to demonstrate competency, a candidate must meet the performance criteria of this unit by estimating the cost of 1 residential or commercial building, and we've chosen a residential building project. And within it is a lot of information which will actually help you in your vocation. Excuse me. Okay, so tells us first of all, identifying the estimated cost of a construction project sounds like a big task, and it is. Before you can begin calculating how much a project will cost to complete, you need to know what the requirements are. Clients' expectations of the finished product according to the construction drawings and specifications. If we don't get this right and then we start to actually work the job out, we're going to be in big problems. And so that's another one thing. So understanding the statutory requirements, and that's the reason that you had that assessment. And so this is where some of these little bits and pieces will be quite handy. There's the dot points: identify building site, identify site facilities, identify waste removal requirements, as well as the associated waste management site fees. This is expensive business nowadays. Okay. I know it's hard to believe, but in the 50s, they just used to chuck it out the front yard and hope that the wind would blow. And you'd see shavings and stuff just blowing everywhere and nobody cared. And a lot more requirements. Identify project-specific statutory approvals or compliance costs. They are much higher today than what they were many years ago. Reading and interpreting construction drawings and specifications in conjunction with the relevant building and construction regulations, codes, and standards. Now, as an estimator, you don't actually draw the plans, although you may do a sketch or something like that to couple in with it, but generally the plans are already drawn. Now, you may actually point out, you're the first person who sees those plans often, and more often than not, if there's any errors, you're going to pick it up. And so that's where the good old mobile phone, a picture, and then send that off to the actual drafter, and they go, oh dear, I missed that, and we can get something sorted before it gets to the construction point. So the first documents are the construction drawings and specifications, and what they do, you can read the rest of that. Also, all of these should actually comply with construction regulation codes and standards. These include what material to use, how the construction should be done, what elements should be present at the site of construction. And so this is actually a really key aspect of estimating. Construction drawings, all right, a graphical representation of the building to be constructed, while the specifications provide the details of the product, materials, and then thereby the work necessary to complete the construction process. It's not banging up a couple of nails on the wall and going, that's it. You have to actually follow that through. So it's really quite critical. Okay, these are the different plans. Now, floor plans. Most residential homes would be, you'd just say it's the plan. Then you've got your site plans, elevation drawings, section drawings, and detailed drawings. So if there's anything that's a little bit out of the ordinary, the detailed drawing is the one that picks that up. And also the section drawing is a great one to actually have a look at all the details, what type of roof, how are the trusses made, what are is the timber work, what is the cladding, all those types of factors. Drawings and specifications. So every state has symbols for different types of equipment, such as wall sockets, wall lights, consumer unit, whatever that means, TV aerial, okay, thermostat, dimmer switches. These are really important. So if you see something like that on a plan, this is where you need to revert to this and go, oh yeah, that's what that means. All right, whereas you might be allowing for something that's not even what it's attended. Okay. When we look over here, we were talking about baths, shower trays, the types of symbols. This is a very, very important one. Which way's north? So we go north, south, okay, east, west. Okay, really important, because if you actually get this wrong, you could be actually working out of the wrong side of the building. Okay, brick, stone, sand, another form of stone, and this one's stone work, and then rubble. Okay, we've got some water closets. Interesting, I've never seen it like that. Normally it looks like a toilet. Block work, boiler flue. Here we have some insulation, that's very common. Sawn timber, so normally at the end of the timber will be a cross edge. Hardwood, plywood, a door, what that looks like, which hand it is, okay. And so basically you look at the door when it's closed, and it's a left-hand door. It just actually opens across to the left. All right. Now here's a picture ahead of time of the job that you will be actually estimating, and this was actually drawn by Phil Wilkins Building Design, and it's a 160 square meter home, and the size of the land is 306 meters squared. This is a subdividing issue. The large block, they've split it in two, and this home is at one side. So John's in charge of identifying and producing the estimated costs for a project with the following details. And so what's really important, and straight away, the number one thing for your plan view, or here we go, ground level plan, is A, dimensions, because you need to know what size everything is. And then over here is your areas. Down here, your window schedule, and this is a funky little window schedule, I can tell you. And up over here, okay, is your energy ratings. So every home today must have an energy rating and comply with R6 and up. It's getting pretty tickety-boo, and so this is very, very important. And so when it goes in for council, they check it to make sure that the R ratings are up to scratch. All right, so here we go. Passive heating and cooling, and down here, these two figures are the ones that you want to check for. So there it all is there, and you can actually have a closer look at that. Special stone, hardwood panels, how the house allows light into the home in winter, how the eaves block the sun in summer is absolutely critical. Now, overnight cross-flow ventilation is really important. And so if you're designing a home, if you have actually a breeze that can blow through the house to take away that heat, and you don't have to use the air conditioner, that is going to save you some money. Okay. All right, so a couple of details there. Regulations. There's our volume 1. Oh, so you can see that. All right. Now, if you do a Google search, odds on you won't get this. Okay. Buildings compliance with NCC. Okay, these are the questions that you've been asked, and here you see it in the PowerPoint. Standards tells you about what the standards are, and also you can get HI and MBA standards and specifications at a relatively cheap price. All right, example of standards now: bushfire attack levels. Okay, methods of testing. This is a bit weird and wonderful, but basically it's been included in there where we're talking about products that come in contact with drinking water. Okay, the EPA, what is it? It's a protection authority delegated to protect the environment and prevent and control environmental harm. So if you were building a home at Hallett Cove in Adelaide, the water there, when it rains, it buckets and it's very steep, and all the water heads straight down to the sea. And so it's a big drama queen when that comes in. If you've got a flat ground, it's not so big an issue. All right, here's some of the acts that you need to actually have a look at, and policies and regulations enforced by the EPA in Victoria. And so this is the reason that I linked this into the Victorian EPA. All right, along with the construction project, there's an actual act that they actually have there as well. Building construction environment can be hazardous, and that's something that you could take into consideration. WHS requirements. This is very large, and no one wants the death of a worker on site, and it's not melodramatic to actually consider so many young apprentices end up fatally injured because they're expected to do way beyond what they're capable of. All state and territories observe the WH Act because it's Commonwealth law. All right, and so each state has consistencies that actually converse with that state and that state only. Okay, a little bit more interesting there about a bit about Western Australia. Now, you've also got this fellow here. All right, and this is really important. Australian business license, an important aspect of the building industry, so we can actually have a look at that. Now, construction drawings should, and again, it's already stated this, so I'm not too fussed about that. And so level 1, plan source from your drawing. So this fellow here is your site plan, and it's really important. It tells you a couple of key things which are absolutely critical to the commencement of this home. Number 1, it actually has 1, 2, 3 offsets that are listed against the boundary as to the position of the home. So that alone is very important. The last thing you want is this house half here and half here, and I have seen that happen, and that's a whole heap of grief. And so we've got a couple of really interesting actually aspects in here, and the other interesting thing while we're on this plan, have a look over here. This is where the electricity pole is situated for this block of land. There's no pole here, it's way up here. So does that affect what you allow for in your underground electric service? I think it is. All right, types of features. Okay, and so you can actually have a look at that. And it goes in, shows you all the different scales that are there. And you can see each one of those and have a look at that. So from the bottom of the image going up, all right, there are some interesting sizes and scales, and these are the key dimensions that you need to actually take into consideration. Elevated parts, the building shows the floor plan, and you can actually see we will be doing a lot of work on this plan. Okay, and it's a simple home, but within it is all the attributes that we need to actually estimate a home. Okay, identify the methods of construction, and so you can have a read of that. Another point, this is straight out of the engineer's plan, and they've got a 200 mil step down. Now that's 100. So if we go across to there it is there. So that's 200 mil step down. This is a Victorian thing. In South Australia, we have a 30 mil step down, but we don't get the water that Victoria has. All right, this particular home also has piers, and the footing sits on top of the piers. So this is quite an interesting concrete estimation. Now, want to actually introduce you, and you've probably heard it, but it doesn't hurt to say it again, that a person with management or control of a workplace must ensure this sentence, so far as is reasonably practical, that the workplace and the means of entering and exiting the workplace and anything arising from the workplaces are without risk to the health and safety of any person. If you can demonstrate that you have actually, so far as is reasonably practical, to ensure that people are safe, no one is going to chop your head off. No one's going to put you in jail. Okay, but you need to actually record what you did, and that's the reason that we fill out safe work method statement, JSAs, all those types of things, so that there's a record of what went on. Okay, and I can remember a couple of years ago where on the Adelaide Hospital there was two particular bad incidents. One of the guys his job was an observer was asleep in the chair, and the guy moved the actual unit and basically squashed him between a column, and that's dumb. Okay, that is where you got to be right on the edge and know what you're doing, and that's an absolute critical aspect of the building industry. All right, so here's the contractor's responsibility is to manage workplace risks. And so you need to actually read some of this. These are huge, and they're key parts. Site facility requirements, okay. So the WHS, you should have the size, location, nature of the construction site, the number, as well as the composition of the workers at the construction site, what's the nature of the work, and the available of power and facilities. An example of an adequate facility set up on a construction site is changing rooms, when workplace procedures specify that work at the site should change in and out of personal protective equipment. I would suggest that that's a large commercial site. Would not happen at all on a residential home, but I get what they're saying. Temporary bounding fence. We need to have one on our site. Most houses nowadays have this. In the previous 50, 60, 70 years, no one bothered. It was just anyone could walk in, anyone could walk out. And to show you how dangerous that is, we were working on a 2-story job at North Adelaide, and unbeknownst to us, an electrician was actually working down the bottom, not using any power tools. He was marking out where all the power points were going to go inside the stud framing. And my offside is right up on top of the roof. He's got a nail gun, and so he lowers down the nail gun by the use of the hose. And as he lowers it down, right at that precise time, and this is where Murphy's always there, as he comes down, right at that very moment, the electrician steps out from inside, which we didn't even know was on site. He should have let us know, and smacks his face front or to the back end of the gun. Okay, and this is how dangerous building sites can be. And so this is why you actually have bounding fences. You need to know who's there, and because now he was an authorized person, but no one knew he was there. All right, and there's the requirements. 17 or 18 years ago, on site as a cutter, I would actually have one of these, and my guys would be up on the roof, and they would actually call out, and I would actually have a list. I'd write down, cut it, and then the boys would actually pick it up. Commercial sites even more so. And so this is these are cheap. For $100 you can get 3 sets, and you can have them with all your guys. And basically, it's a communication device, so very important. Okay, here's a identify and get rid of waste management. Now have a look at that. But the other thing is, nowadays, what should actually happen is all of our waste should be in separate bins, which becomes a big issue. And so, for example, plasterboard, brickwork, masonry, and then glass, plastics, all of those sorts of things. And so that's something that you can actually search. All right, so these are the 5 sets of regulations, and these are the links that are in there. Okay, so, and you don't need to answer these on the PowerPoint, okay, but basically they will pop up as part of your assessment. So there you go. And so that's the first part. All right, project requirements. It's large, it's vast, and so having an overview of how the entire unit works is really critical. If we don't, you're actually doing yourself a disservice. All right, and the big deal is, and most of my career, once I put a price in, I was locked in. Okay, I couldn't suddenly say, oh, geez, I forgot that bit. Oh, yeah, no, I didn't allow for that bit. You actually had to put a price in, and that was all covered. And that's a big deal, because that can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars if you are just lazy and don't do the jobs properly. And if you're in the Wednesday night class or the Tuesday night class, I think it is this year, and Wednesday morning class for estimated costs, a lot of that stuff will come out during the delivery, the types of things that can occur and how we would work together. So that's PowerPoint 1. So if we actually have a look at PowerPoint 2, and they're the only 2 that we're going to actually have a look at today, and I've got to go back to this again. This is really weird. So they've actually changed this dramatically. Let's have a look. All right, be nice. Okay. All right, this is a real bugbear, this is. I don't like this in the new version, so we'll see if we can get that changed. Okay, so calculate material and labour costs. Now, the time-honoured method was books. Nowadays, you've got apps, you've got all sorts of things that you can actually use. So I think I'm going to just highlight the first 2 costs that you need to actually work out for any estimation is material and labour costs. So both of these are really important. A lot of organisations use digitally based software to identify and calculate materials and labour costs. We actually have a student version of Cordell's, which we'll be actually working with, and it'll give you a bit of an insight of what we can actually use. So these are the things that we'll be working on. So we'll be using Cordell's to obtain the rates and prices for things such as how much is the toilet, how much is the timber, etc. We'll identify off-site production costs. We'll also use whenever we have contractors, subcontractors and employees, and also in the middle of the semester, I actually get everybody to upload where they're up to. And that way there I can keep a hand on where the class is. Very often I have up to 80 to 100 students, and it's not possible for me at the end of a semester to actually cover everybody's work and mark in a timely manner. So I split it so that it becomes much easier. Now, the Excel spreadsheet that you are going to be filling in is really data entry. So if you do a great job with your takeoff, the rest is a piece of air per square meter. So you've got a house that's 160 square meters, and I suggest that if a builder goes for that to do a check price or anything like that, he's going to load this big time so that he's covered. Okay, so it wouldn't be this fine, cutting edge, right point of the pencil estimation. It'll be a fair bit of latitude. And this is really important. So these are just some of the Construction Master Pro is a great estimating project, but mate, it's longer than paint drying. All right. Then you finally come to the point where you've done all your work and you need to actually put this in a tender or a bill. Now, generally what a tender does or a bill is it's basically covers every cost. And so it must be enough to cover all the expenses and variations due to price fluctuations and profit. I suggest that those builders that went through, they had no way. It's not possible for suddenly a builder to be $18 million in debt. That's been happening for a long time before they got to that point. And usually what happens is we just go head down, bum up, and we take every job we can to try and trade our way out of it. But at the end of the day, if you haven't got this bit right, your business is in free fall. Okay, a couple of more samples. Nothing too difficult. And so ours is a little bit more sophisticated than that. Certainly not a, top of the tree. The fact is what we're doing here is teaching you how to do that. And you'll find that the number one thing that I'm actually teaching you is the building process. Because if you understand the building process, you then understand how long that process is going to take. If you don't know the building process, there's not a way in the hell that you're going to actually get a price that is going to be accurate. And so this is a real key. And there it is. So these are the four, and these are the theoretical stops that we put together. These are the theoretical things that we need to actually know. What's the project requirements? What are the materials and labor costs in that project? And then we identify the type and cost of any physical resources. What do we need? Scaffold? Do we need bunding? Do we need all those types of things? Those first three are all bundled up under produce estimated project costs. And so that's the reason I want to get this part out the way first, week one, get you to work on that. And I don't think it's terribly difficult, but it is something that you can use. Now, one suggestion, and if you're not doing it now, you should start, and that is have yourself a digital library. And so under the heading, estimated cost, the unit code, any resources that you have to open up, save a copy for yourself. You may have the situation where you need to come back and say, yeah, I did something like that. And you can actually go back and there's the information for you. Because once you finish the unit and another class takes over, you can't get onto those resources. So it is well worth it. These PowerPoints, they're worth the resources that I put in there. The timber resources are really critical aspects. And so when I do the introductory video for the entire course from start to finish, they'll have that listed in there. So, okay, so this is where we are, and I hope this helps you. Thank you very much.